Alright, so we're going to graph y equals the secant of x, and to do that I have some steps. We're going to take the reciprocal, identify your a, b, c, and d, 4 intervals plus 1, 5 x values. We're going to graph it, but when you graph it, I want you to use either dots or I prefer a pencil. We're going to eventually draw asymptotes at the X intercepts, and I'll explain why. We'll graph it above and below. And then lastly, we're going to erase. Why did you guys think I wrote those in yellow on the screen, the steps? Yeah, we've already done this before, so all of this right here in green, that'll just be a big review. Okay? Let's go ahead and graph this. So the first thing I need to do is find the reciprocal. Class, what's the reciprocal of secant? Is cosine. So I'm not actually taking the reciprocal identity, which is secant equals 1 over cosine. I'm just taking the letters such as r over x, and if I take the reciprocal of that, that's x over r, and I'll explain that later on. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and identify our a, b, c, and d. To do that, you can always write your letters right above it. Class, what's our a value? And what does the a stand for? Do I have an amplitude for cosine? Yes, I do. So your amplitude is going to be a 1. How about our b value? That's also a 1. To find the period, I use the equation 2 pi over b. Remember, tangent and cotangent was pi, and here I have 2 pi. So 2 pi over 1 equals 2 pi. Class, is there a c value? Why is there no c value? There's no parentheses. So the fancy word is phase shift. There is no phase shift. Is there a d value? How come? There's no plus or minuses, and there's nothing in front that says something like 3 minus or 3 plus, right? Those are a constant, so they call those vertical shifts. Okay, we did all of that just to identify the A, B, C, and D. The next thing I'm going to do is get our 4 intervals. So let's go ahead and draw a x-axis. I'm going to go ahead and draw 4 points plus 1. Remember, this is the length of the graph, and this one, I want to know where it's starting and end point. So I'm going to put this between 0 and 2 pi. Remember, you put everything to the right in between that interval. And this tells you where to start, which we're going to start at 0, and we're going to end at 2 pi. So I'm going to put 0 and 2 pi here. Class, if you add those together and divide by 2, what do you get? And the midpoint between these two? And this one. Here's another little trick. I haven't shown this one to you guys. The reason why it's called 4 intervals, if you just take 4 and divide it by that, what do you get? 2 pi over 4, which is, you're just counting by pi's over 2. Let's get our 5x values now. I'm just taking what I have on the x-axis, that becomes my x values. And here, I'm going to graph cosine. Remember, we're graphing cosine to help us get the graph of secant. Now, I do want to show you where this comes from, so this is just a review, and we'll need this for secant. Class, what's the order pair here? X, Y. What's my R value? Your R value is always 1. 1 unit. 1 unit on the unit circle. So cosine is which two letters? X over R. So I'm going to write 1 divided by 1, which is what value, class? Pi over 2. What's the order pair?
0, 1.
X, Y, R. Class, what's X over R? 0 over 1, which gives us 0. Pi. What's the order pair? X, Y, R. X over R is?
Negative 1 over 1.
Negative 1 over 1. 3 pi over 2. What's the order pair?
0, negative 1.
So X, Y, R. What is X over R?
0.
And it gives us, should be negative 1. And the last one, we already did it, right? What is it? 1 over 1, and that's just 1. And that helps us give us the, I call it the golden rule for cosine. Alright, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in a box. And now I'm going to graph cosine, but I'm going to use a pencil. So, number 5, graph using dots or pencils. And the reason why I prefer a pencil is so that you can erase it. Now that I have a 0, I can graph the y-axis. And you can choose wherever you want to place 1 and negative 1. And now I'm going to go ahead and graph cosine. Cosine at 0 is 1. And at pi over 2 is 0. And at pi is negative 1. And 3 pi over 2 is 0. And at 2 pi is 1. So here's my graph of cosine. So class, did I ask you to graph cosine? What's the ultimate goal?
Secant.
We're trying to graph secant. Okay, so now we're going to enter a territory where it's new. Secant is which two letters?
That's R over X.
So all I have to do is take the reciprocal or flip those numbers. If you flip 1 over 1, you get 1 over 1, which is 1. How about a pi over 2? Which is undefined. Reciprocal, which is reciprocal. Graph this one in green. So now I'm going to do at 0, I'm going to graph 1. At pi over 2 for secant, it is undefined. So I'm going to draw my orange pen that I should have in my hand. At pi, I have -1. At 3 pi over 2, undefined. Where's my orange pen? And at 2 pi, I have 1. Now, this explains this step right here, asymptote at X intercepts. Do you see where the X intercepts are? You're actually drawing an asymptote at those, and the reason why is because when you take the reciprocal of these values, their denominators are 0, which is undefined. Alright, now this is the fun part. Step number 7 says graph above and below. So at those green points, you're actually going to graph above it. Below here. And above. And then the last step, you can go back and erase. I should have put my asymptote in pencil that I can erase that, but now I'm going to erase basically cosine. And there in pink, well, should have done that. In pink, I basically graphed secant of x. So to review, to get secant of x in pink, I had to graph cosine. And then you just erase cosine.